History tells the story of the world and of our lives. Sometimes that history goes bump in the night. Broadcasting from the center of oddity and the supernatural in Central Florida, it's the History Goes Bump podcast.
Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to this 555th episode of the History Goes Bump podcast, Ghost Tours for the Theater of the Mind. I'm your host, Diane.
And this is Kelly.
Kelly, on this episode, we're doing a location that was suggested by our listener, Sandra Latham Parr, who also is an executive producer. She wanted us to check out the Arlington Resort Hotel and Spa. This is in Hot Springs, Arkansas.
Oh, I could use a good soak.
I can't wait to bring this to the listeners.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of locations in Arkansas, so this will be fun. Or is it Arkansas?
Oh, goodness.
Before we get into that, we want to welcome into the Spooktacular crew, Michelle with one L, Christina with a K, Brenna, and Donna.
Thank you so much for joining the Spooktacular crew.
And now, this moment in Oddity.
The moment in Oddity was suggested by Jenny Lynn Rains. In today's world, most of us know someone who has pursued finding genetic leads to extended family. Many companies have been founded to assist in these searches, such as 23andMe and Ancestry.com. Sometimes it's simply to document a family tree, but other times it's in search of a long-lost loved one. In the case of a United Kingdom family, the search actually came to them unexpectedly. You see, the Davies family received a postcard this last August of 2024 from a long-lost relative. The postcard was delivered 100 years late in spite of being sent in 1903. The postcard was addressed to Lydia, having been sent by her brother Ewart. It arrived at the Swansea Building Society's Craddock Street branch. The postal anomaly was published in different forms of media. The news gained the attention of separate families that discovered that they were related. Ewart's grandson, Nick Davies, stated that meeting new family members due to the discovered postcard was extraordinary. As the family story goes, Ewart was summering at his grandfather's, and knowing that his sister back in Swansea collected postcards, he decided to send one to Lydia. The postcard brought together 4 distant relatives, some of which had general knowledge of possible extended family, but no solid details regarding their personal information. It is thought that perhaps the postcard fell out of a Bible that was purchased at auction following a house clearance. This may have then prompted the finder to put it back into the postal system. Regardless of what brought this family reunion to fruition, receiving a postcard 100 years late certainly is odd.
Are you afraid of the dark? That's just silly. What you should be afraid of is the thing that watches you sleep.
And now, this month in history.
In the month of September, on the 11th in 1609, Henry Hudson discovered Manhattan Island. Hudson was an English sea explorer working for the Dutch East India Company. His goal was to find the reputed Northeast Passage to Cathay, now present-day China. Instead, his exploration brought him to New Netherlands. Hudson explored the region around modern-day New York's metropolitan area. The first Dutch colonists arrived with the first 31 families in 1623, and by 1625 the colony of New Amsterdam was established. Henry's journey took him up the Hudson River, which was named for him in 1664 when the English took over the colony from the Dutch. This was also when New Netherlands was renamed New York after the Duke of York. By 1664, the village of New Amsterdam was a community of 1,500 people who spoke 18 different languages. Although Henry Hudson never did find a Northeast Passage to China, he greatly contributed to the navigational geography of North America.
The Arlington Hotel and Spa has so many ghost stories that are connected to it that it would make more sense for us to tell the listeners that it is located in Haunt Springs rather than Hot Springs, Arkansas.
I see what you did there.
Did you now? The hotel is located in the heart of downtown Hot Springs and is the third version of the hotel to stand and has been here for 100 years. This is a large and glorious historic hotel that hosted the rich and powerful and famous decades ago. Join us for the history and hauntings of the Arlington Resort Hotel and Spa.
The thermal springs and hot springs attracted Native Americans for centuries to come and partake of the healing waters. A French Jesuit priest named Father Marquette joined forces with an explorer named Louis Joliet to explore the northern portion of the Mississippi River Valley. In 1673, they traveled down to Arkansas and claimed the area for France. Spain would obtain it in 1763 via the Treaty of Paris, and then was back in France's hands by 1800. America would end up with it in 1803 with the Louisiana Purchase. A man named Prudhomme was the first permanent settler, but the Quapaw tribe owned the springs. They ceded the land in 1818 through a treaty. The hot springs were protected as the Hot Springs Reservation in 1832, and that became Hot Springs National Park in 1921.
Railroad executive Samuel Fordyce started early with the railroad. He was 20 when he became a station agent for the Central Ohio Railroad. A year later, the Civil War had broken out, and he enlisted with the 1st Ohio Volunteer Cavalry. He eventually was promoted to captain and wound up wounded 3 times and captured 3 times.
I guess 3 was the magic number for him.
Goodness. After the war, his health was in decline from his war wounds, and he had heard about the healing benefits of the water in hot springs, so he moved. He assisted with the growth of the city, and he joined forces with 2 other entrepreneurs, Samuel Stitt and William Gaines, to build the Arlington Hotel in 1875. This was the first luxury hotel in the area and became the anchor for the bathhouse district. It had 120 guest rooms and had gas lighting. The hotel was 3 stories and built from wood. Despite being the first, the hotel soon lagged behind other hotels being built like the Majestic and Eastman, and it was raised in 1893. The newer rendition had a larger guest capacity with 300 rooms with 5 levels and updated amenities, and was designed in the Spanish Revival style. The interior featured a rotunda, pink parlor, grand ballroom, and the showpiece was the grand ornamental oak stairway that circled a beautiful glass dome.
Things went well until 1923 when a fire started at an electrical panel. William Pinkerton was staying at the hotel, yes, that one, who created the Pinkerton Agency, and he, along with other guests, figured that the fire would be quickly put out. So he found himself a comfortable chair on the spacious veranda and decided to enjoy a cigar.
Oh boy.
I mean, you get looky-loos all the time. Why not be the looky-loo if it's actually happening to you? Pinkerton was quite wrong, as the building burned completely to the ground and he lost all his belongings. So maybe he should have ran and grabbed his belongings and smoked a cigar across the street.
Yeah, whoopsie-woo.
It was decided to rebuild again, but this time the hotel was put on a plot across the street from the original. The new and current Arlington Hotel opened on November 28, 1924 with a gala New Year's Eve dinner dance. The hotel was designed by the primary architect of the Arkansas State Capitol, George R. Mann. This was designed in the Mediterranean style and features 2 massive towers that make it quite distinct. There were 560 guest rooms, a writing room, card room, boardroom, crystal ballroom, and Venetian room. A music room opened onto the Venetian room and featured performances by the Arlington Orchestra. Vacationers got to enjoy the ease of not having to leave the hotel to enjoy the mineral springs. The Arlington had an in-house bathhouse, and for those willing to pay more, there were 50 rooms that had the water piped in.
The 1950s brought the upgrade of air conditioning and heat, and in 1969, the original hand-operated elevators were replaced with 3 guest elevators. Who was operating those by hand?
Well, that's what the guy who was the elevator man got to do, I guess.
It's a bummer to lose the nostalgia of the original elevator, but never fear. The Arlington still features the manually operated original bathhouse elevator that is lined with beveled glass and shining brass. The first radio station in Arkansas, KTHS, broadcasts from the Arlington. Former Arkansas Governor Joe T. Robinson announced his acceptance of the Democratic nomination for vice president in 1928 from the radio station. He used the hotel as his campaign headquarters. Many Miss Arkansas pageants were hosted at the hotel, and several luminaries stayed here, including U.S. Presidents Franklin Roosevelt, Harry Truman, George H.W. Bush, and Bill Clinton, Tony Bennett, Babe Ruth, Barbra Streisand, and Yoko Ono.
The infamous have stayed here as well. Al Capone liked to rent out the entire fourth floor for his crew, and he would stay in room 443, and so that suite has been named for him. Capone liked this room because he could look across the street from his window and see the activities at the Southern Club, which is today the Wax Museum. Many of the original rooms are still in use with a few changes here and there. The writing room is now a Starbucks, and the card room has had its name changed to Magnolia Room. The hotel has several suites for rent, not only named for Al Capone, but there's also the Reagan, named for Ronald Reagan, who actually stayed there, and the Babe Ruth. Mineral water rooms feature bathtubs with hot springs mineral water piped in. There are twin outdoor pools, spa services, a convention center, shops, restaurants, and an award-winning lobby bar.
The Arlington Hotel wasn't one of those hotels that liked to talk about their strange activity. But several years ago, the hotel management started allowing employees to share encounters that they had had with the other side. And they certainly were glad they did, because people have been flocking to the haunted rooms. There are reports of faucets turning themselves on and off on their own. Disembodied laughter is heard, and lights flash on and off by themselves. Guests and staff have seen full-bodied apparitions in period clothing strolling through the lobby and walking in the hallways. One spirit that has been seen is a little girl in a pink dress. There is also a woman who is seen wearing a wedding dress. The fourth floor is home to the spirit of former bellhop Henry Tweedle.
Some guests were staying at the hotel, and they captured what looks like two footprints in the carpet standing in front of the door to room 723. They are believed to belong to a lady in white that haunts the hotel. Guests also claim to have seen the spirit of a man taking a bath on the men's side of the bathhouse. Yikes, I hope he had his clothes on. Nobody wants to see a naked ghost. Come on now. A man wearing a black suit is seen in the laundry room. Our bartender claims that a certain bottle of wine likes to jump off the shelf on occasion, and this has been witnessed by guests. The elevator will run by itself to the fourth floor and then open. People believe this is the spirit of Al Capone. He did, after all, love the fourth floor. And Kelly, you remember we had Aaron Egnatz on with us for a Paranormal Conversation just a few weeks back?
Sure.
And this was one of the things that came up. We talked about Al Capone and all the places he haunted. Add this one to the list.
Absolutely. Carmen Jones is the Arlington Director of Operations, and she told the Sentinel Record, "The Magnolia Room downstairs occasionally will be setting up for a group, and the lights will go real bright, and then they flicker. I've had our maintenance department, and we've brought in electricians to look at it, and there's nothing wrong with the wiring. It's not the dimming switch, it's just unexplainable. There's also a chandelier in the Venetian dining room that's far in the back corner, and you could be standing there at the serving station, and all of a sudden it will go extremely bright, and it's the only chandelier in the room that will do it, and then it'll dim back out. And all of them are on the same wiring."
Jones says that room 824 is the most haunted room in the hotel. She said, "I've heard several stories of items falling off the bathroom shelf, the lights turning on and flickering while people are trying to sleep. A lot of the experiences take place between around 3 a.m. to 4 a.m. This particular bathroom, the sink will turn on periodically, and the bathroom will get all steamy while they're asleep, and they wake up and they walk in there and their items fall off the shelves." Jones said of the Capone suite, I've had a lot of guests say that occasionally when you stay in there, you catch the smell of a cigar, and of course, it's a non-smoking hotel, so we did not know where that's coming from. Guests have heard the connecting doorknob turn, but you can't access that doorknob from the other room because there's no doorknob on the other side, but they'll see the doorknob, start moving.
That's very weird.
Yeah. And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors.
Natural State Paranormal investigated in 2021, and they stayed in room 824. And when they asked if anyone wanted to speak to them, they captured an EVP saying, "No way." And then a few minutes later, they asked if the spirits wanted them to leave, and an EVP said, "Yeah." A REM pod set up in the middle of the bed went off several times. It went like this. They set up the REM pod and were getting ready to leave the room, and it went off. They would ask for the spirit to do it again, and nothing. Then they would start to leave again, and the REM pod would go off again. It did this several times, so it was like it was telling them not to go. Or just really messing around with them.
I mean, we would do that.
Totally. Probably the coolest thing happened at the end of the evening in their room. They were using the SLS camera, and it had an entity on it a couple of times, and it almost seemed like it was hanging on the back of the bathroom door. So they were capturing this via the mirror. When they asked if it was behind the door, the spirit box said, "Hiding."
I thought that was really cool. And it was like he was pointing the SLS camera at an angle towards the bathroom and the mirror, and you could kind of see it like that. It was really bizarre.
So strange.
Yeah, and so I was like, it couldn't have been mapping anything else. And just the fact that at the same time that they were like, "Is that you behind the door?" And then it says "hiding" over the spirit box, that indicates something supernatural.
Something's messing
What's
around.
going on there, yes. Now, this is all we really could get on the Arlington Resort Hotel. There wasn't a whole lot of history there. And then there was just this haunting activity there. And I went, I wonder if anything else is going on in Hot Springs. And wouldn't you know, they have a ghost tour. So clearly there are other haunts in this city. So I thought, Kelly, we might as well share all of these other haunts with everybody.
Definitely.
Bathhouse Row still has 8 surviving bathhouses and continues to be the architectural core of downtown Hot Springs. These bathhouses took the place of the early sweat lodges built by the Native Americans. The year 1946 was the height of the bathing era with over 1 million baths taken.
Freshwater every time?
Ooh, I don't know. Well, I mean, they're minerals. I doubt it. And then I was thinking, they need a McDonald's sign for that. 1 million served.
Oh, Lord.
1 million bathed. I don't know. Over 1 million bathed. Bathhouse Row was declared a National Historic Landmark in 1987, but unfortunately hasn't seen much use. Only 2 of the houses are still operating, and a third has been adapted into the Fordyce Bathhouse Visitor Center and Museum. The Hale is the oldest bathhouse, having opened in 1893, and it was renovated into a theater in 1981, but closed before it was even open a year. Right across from Bathhouse Row is the Bathhouse Soapery and Caldarium, which had originally been a Japanese tea room. A beautiful high schooler named Violet Bowles had worked here. A young man had become obsessed with her, and when she wouldn't reciprocate his feelings, he murdered her in the tea room. The haunting going on here is that people claim to sometimes feel as though someone is wrapping their hands around their neck in the store's back left corner. So if you're shopping there, don't go into the back left corner.
Clearly.
And it's still an open store, and they've got a website and everything. Looks like they have some cool soap there.
Adair Park sits between Granny's Kitchen and It's About Rocks. This is the original site of the Arlington Hotel, and some people may have died in the fire. In particular, there are those who say at least one man did because they hear his groans in the park at night. Those groans and moans have been captured as EVP. St. John the Baptist is a Catholic church at 589 West Grand Avenue. Apparently, the site was once home to a pauper cemetery, and as always seems to happen in these cases, not all the bones were moved. Colonel George Latta bought the cemetery and made an honest effort, but while the church was being constructed, bones kept getting unearthed. These bones were put inside a very large box that was sealed and placed under the altar rail, where they remained for many years, but don't seem to be there anymore, and no one knows what happened to the bones. The church is said to be haunted with shadow figures being seen, and lights have a mind of their own.
The Poets Loft was a performance art theater that had been located at 514 Central Avenue in the upper part of the building. Back at the time when Hot Springs was a little wilder, it was called the Raven Club and was a gambling hall and bordello. In 1912, it was a jewelry store and loan office. Today, we aren't sure what's upstairs. I did a Google search and zeroed in on the satellite picture, and it looks like it might be a jewelry repair shop. Definitely on the ground floor is an antique shop, and it's been there ever since the Poet's Loft had been there. There were said to be several spirits here. You remember that show Ghost Lab?
I do.
It was like, I think back in 2010, 2011 that actually was on TV. They investigated the Poet's Loft, and that was in 2010. Shortly before that time, a regular performer at the club named T died. People claimed that he was haunting the place. So this is going to be a relatively new haunting. I mean, they're going to pick up on some other stuff too, but it mainly seems like it's T that they're going to have interactions with, which I found fascinating considering that he had just recently passed away, and we don't hear a lot of experiences that people have with recent passes unless it's like a family member and they come to visit before they leave this plane or something like that. The stairway leading up into the former club had reports of people being shoved, and this is not T doing this. They think this is coming from something else, probably the rough and wild guys that used to be a part of the Raven Club. An employee named Sam told the crew that he was closing up one night, and as he walked down the stairs, he felt a hand pressing against his back. He was the only one in the building. The front door would also open by itself and slam shut. When the Poet's Loft was there, it had all these pictures all around the wall. It was of different people who had done poetry readings from the stage. There were some historical pictures there. And of course, there was one picture in particular that had some musical performers, and T was in that picture. And this picture that had T in it would never stay straight on the wall. So you could say, well, maybe they had heavy trucks that are going by the outside. It's shaking the building. And so, the pictures are going askew. I would never think that crooked pictures is an indication that we definitely have ghosts, unless they're all like going the same way. And you looked and they were all straight, and then you look over again and then they're all crooked or something. That would make me think paranormal. But the fact that always this picture will not hang right. The owner at the time said that they would do everything they could to, they would rehang it. They'd put it in a different spot. Anything they could do to get it to stay straight, and it would never stay straight on the wall. And then there were times that employees actually saw it moving.
Oh, wow.
A dark apparition wearing a hat would be seen, and T was a black man, and he did like to wear a hat. So some people are wondering if this is some kind of a shadow figure of him, and that, if he passed more recently, we wonder if ghosts have to kind of learn to be able to do certain things. So maybe he can't fully show himself because he had newly passed, which makes me wonder now, we are 14 years down the road, if somebody would go in there and investigate now, or ask somebody who works at this, maybe the jewelry repair shop, do you ever see a full-bodied apparition? Is he able to show himself completely now?
Right.
And he's probably pretty bummed because this is a place where all of his friends and everybody would hang out. And if they're not there anymore, maybe he wouldn't be there anymore either. That might be why he was connected to it. A local poet named Celeste had been really nervous on stage. And after she got done reading her poem, she felt a hand rest on her shoulder as if telling her that she did a good job. There was no one behind her, and an employee told her it was something that T would do. The crew captured the sound of bongos playing, which is what T played. Now, one of the women that they talked to, she heads up all of the poets that were there, and she and T were not only good friends, but they'd been engaged for a short period of time, and he passed really suddenly. He'd gotten cancer, and they told him that he probably had a year, maybe, at the most, but they definitely said he had several months. He died like within 3 weeks.
Oh, wow.
So she said they knew he was going to pass, but it was just really, really sudden.
Sad.
So she gets up and she reads this poem, and you could tell it was a poem for him, towards him. And they think that they had captured the sound of a male voice on an EVP. But before they were able to check all of that stuff, they asked the audience if any of them had noticed anything while they were sitting out there listening to different poets giving their presentations. And there was a guy who got up there and he goes, well, I don't know if this is anything, but that young woman, when she was reading her poem, I could have sworn I kept hearing a male voice saying, I'm sorry, I'm sorry, I'm sorry. Then he goes to sit back down. So they go in and they're listening to the EVPs later. And sure enough, while she's saying the poem, you can hear a male voice saying, I'm sorry. They play it for her. she starts crying and she's like, that's T's voice.
Wow.
So it's pretty
How
amazing.
moving.
Yeah.
Yeah. The Ohio Club is located at 336 Central Avenue. The Ohio Club is Arkansas's oldest bar. This started as a bar and casino in 1905. Al Jolson performed at the club in 1915. Al Capone would frequent the place, as did Bugsy Siegel, Bugs Moran, and Lucky Luciano during Prohibition.
Hopefully Bugsy Siegel and Al Capone weren't there at the same time.
At the time, it was called the Ohio Cigar Store, with 10 feet of the front being walled off to contain the cigar store, and then there were 2 doors that led into the bar and upstairs to the casino. In the 1930s, Mae West performed here.
Come up and see me sometime.
That was very good.
Just put me on a swing. Here I go.
There you go. They continued the tradition of live performances. And hard to believe, but the casino and sports book remained open until 1967. Owners and employees claim that they have had unexplained experiences. Doors slam on their own, music is heard even though no music is playing, and glasses are heard clinking.
The Malco Theater is located at 817 Central Avenue and is known as the Maxwell Blade Theater of Magic today. The Princess Theater originally sat on this spot and was built in 1910. It featured vaudeville acts and silent films, but that all ended on Christmas Eve of 1934. The theater caught fire and burned all the way down to its foundation. Rebuilding began immediately, and this new rendition of the theater was larger and had an irregular shape. The architectural style was changed to Art Deco. The theater was sold to the Malco Theater Group, and the name was changed to the Malco Theater and reopened in 1947. The Malco was segregated until 1964, with black patrons having a separate ticketing booth, separate entrance, separate concessions, and they could only sit in the balcony. The theater has retained that separate entrance as a tribute to civil rights victories. The Malco mostly ran as a movie theater through the years until it was purchased in 1995 by magician Maxwell Blade. He completely renovated the building with new seating and a state-of-the-art sound and lighting system. Blade himself claims to have never seen a ghost in the theater, but he did hear a theater seat folding up and down when he was getting ready to leave the empty theater one night. When he went further into the theater to see what made the sound, he saw a shadow figure crossing the exit. He left quickly, and it shook him enough that he wouldn't be in the theater alone at night for some time. And when he would bring his daughter to the theater years ago, she's grown now, but she was only 3, and she would ask who the little boy was that was standing at the top of the theater staircase. 4 people are said to have died in the theater, and one was a little boy who died in the upstairs bathroom of the theater in the early 1970s.
Hot Springs is a cute little town with a history of healing and haunts. Are the Arlington Hotel and these locations in Hot Springs haunted?
That is for you to decide. Well, thank you so much, Sandra, for suggesting this location. It is one of these glorious hotels. It reminds me a lot of the Baker Hotel in Texas.
Oh, okay.
Just kind of just how big it is in this little city. Mineral wells. This is near a mineral place. They seem very similar to me, very similar in design. And just the fact that these huge hotels have managed to retain their character and still be the anchor, I guess, to these downtown areas. It's very cool. I want to invite you guys to check out our website at historygoesbump.com. And if you'd like to send us some feedback, you can do that at historygoesbump@gmail.com. I want to thank you guys for joining us on this episode. I've been your host, Diane.
And this has been Kelly.
You take care now.
Bye-bye.
This episode is brought to you by our executive producers.
Be sociable. Drop the chain rattling, neck biting, and shape shifting. And join us on Facebook and Twitter at History Goes Bump. Like the page and follow us.
things went well until 1932. Nah.
You're doing what I do.
Or how about 1923?
And Yoko Ono.
Yeah, she's a
Does I sound
beautiful
like-
singer. You sounded just like her.
I didn't do it into the microphone.
It probably picked you up. You were loud enough.
The fourth floor is home to the spirit of former bellhop Henry Tweedle.
Is he with Tweedledee and Tweedledum?